So when it comes to literature, anthologies and collections of short stories are not as lauded as the novel. But this doesn't mean that a short story can't have a huge impact. I attended 2 events on Friday at the NGC Bocas Lit Fest, which is the annual literary festival of Trinidad and Tobago. Basically, it's like BookCon, but for Trinidad. The first event was called An Island State of Mind, which featured 2 readings from and a discussion about a new anthology published by Pcash Press called So Many Islands. This was edited by Nicholas Laughlin and Nyla Emoja, and it's basically a collection of essays, short stories, and poems from various islands across the world. The event was chaired by the editor himself, who introduced 2 of the writers, Tracy Assing, a local filmmaker and writer right here from Trinidad and Tobago, as well as Grenadian author Jacob Ross. One of the things that struck me the most about the event was the concept of this collection in the first place. This is one of the first, if not the first, collection or anthology of writings from islanders across the world, like the whole world, like this whole thing there. And one of the things that was discussed on the panel was this idea of a common thread between all of these islands. The fact that this collection focuses on Commonwealth Islands in particular, naturally you will see conversations about similar colonial histories, language, ecology, culture.
We also face a lot of the same issues, political issues, social issues, economic issues of kind of development, human rights that are common to us across the world.
Another similarity would also be the experience and ideology of indigenous peoples from all of these various islands, as reflected by Tracy Assing herself, who is part of the indigenous Trinidadian community.
From what I've seen from indigenous writers, there's a common thread, actually, about our relationship to the land and about the issues of climate change, the issues that face us now. This is a common thread in all of the writing and expression I've seen from indigenous writers chosen for the book from the Pacific.
Another thing that really struck me about this was at the beginning of the discussion when Nicholas talked about the fact that one of the contributors, who was from the Pacific Islands, couldn't make it to the panel.
There was originally supposed to be a third writer here this morning, a third contributor to the anthology, Mary Tato, who's from Rotuma. Unfortunately, visa issues made it impossible for us to travel because you can't travel from Fiji to Trinidad without passing through somewhere bigger. But it made me think about the fact that our relationships, the islanders around the world, are still mediated by bigger and more powerful countries. So in terms of travel, in terms of politics, in terms of culture.
After he said that, it really made me think about the importance of a collection like this. Because if we have these wider colonial and international barriers preventing us from interacting with each other and having conversations about our commonalities, then literature becomes a somewhat accessible and important means through which we can have these conversations. So yeah, the event was really cool, and I actually got Tracy and Jacob both to sign my book, which was very awesome. The next event that I went to was somewhat similar, and it was chaired by Jeremy Pointing, and it was called Take 3, Keep It Short, because short stories. Get it? Just short. Okay. It started off with some interesting readings from Grenadian Jacob Ross again, Trinidadian Jennifer Rahim, and Trinidadian Keith Jadim, who all read something from their own anthologies. The discussion after initially kind of veered away from talking about the short story format in of itself, but also kind of highlighted some different things that were quite interesting. For example, they talked a lot about the Caribbean Gothic and how a lot of contemporary Caribbean literature seems to be embodying this style of writing. And I'm not going to pretend like I don't have an extremely vague idea of what Gothic literature is, so let's just move on. Another thing they talked about was politics in these short stories and whether these authors intentionally write to address political issues. Jadim says that he doesn't necessarily always intentionally or overtly try to address political themes or issues when writing his work. But Jennifer Rahim, whose collection that she read from was about the 2011 curfew, does, at least in that book. Personally, I think that whenever you have a nuanced Caribbean story, there's always going to inevitably be some sort of political narrative there, however implicit or unintentional or subtle it may be. The final thing that Ross said is something that actually tied both of the events together for me, and that had to do with the concept of intersectionality in short story collections. Now, this term was not used explicitly, but he did say that short story collections often try to address one particular theme or event or issue or narrative from the perspective of different people who might live their lives differently, which to me serves to show a more holistic view of the idea or the event or the theme being discussed, whether it be a collection about the curfew or the Grenadian Revolution or so many different islands across the world. Ow. Anyways, that's it for this video. Thank you all so much for watching. In the comments down below, share your thoughts on any of the ideas that I brought up in this video. And until next time, inshallah, keep reading.